Real, raw, and honest stories from founders who are in it and going for it. With your hosts, Mik and Trav.
This is the Growing For It podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Growing For It with Mik and Trav. We left off in the last episode at a pretty exciting segment where you had gone through your bankruptcy with the IC group, and you had that conversation with Klaudia, and you decided to pick yourself up, go forward with AirFlight as a new company instead of tucking your tail between your legs and running away like a lot of people would do in that situation.
Yeah.
And that sort of brings us up to the incorporation of AirFlight, actually.
Yep. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a crazy moment. So Klaudia kind of kicked me in the butt and said, come on. And now we're like, let's go. So it was like you, me, and two other co-founders incorporating AirFlight. But to do that in Denmark, you kind of need cash, right? And I borrowed that cash from Klaudia, and then we were kind of like, we talked to the lawyer, they incorporated the company, and now we had like a registration number.
Yeah, had to get our holding company set up, and it was very official.
Yeah, exactly.
Super exciting.
So now we're kind of going, right? And we got ourselves a little workshop as well.
Yeah.
In the outskirts of the main city that we live in a small suburb.
Which was crazy because that was one of the co-founders had an uncle who was project manager out here or something like that, had this connections, and that's still where we have the company.
Yeah,
actually, as of this moment in time,
it's crazy.
We've gotten a ridiculously nice deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've been super nice to us out here.
It's been really great, and it's kind of like our garage, right?
Yeah,
starting from the bottom and expanded, and that have been crazy.
Yeah, I mean when you're making software. If you're making some small devices, you can use a regular garage.
Yeah.
But when you're making a flying car, you kind of need a workshop for that one.
Especially when the flying car is like 6.5 meters in diameter.
Yeah.
But then we're kind of going, but it doesn't last long, this fairy tale of coolness, because we use, I think, maybe about a month to set everything up in the workshop. And I just remember I came from that down period. Yeah. And now it was like new stuff, new things, like flying car vision that was so big that I flew up from the bed each day to like come here.
Massive amounts of creativity, massive amounts of just creation, just coming to create. And I remember it was so cool because you had some money that you could utilize to kind of get everything going.
Yeah.
And because this project, like you've been on this for a while.
Yeah.
And I was extremely new to it at this point.
Yes.
Right. And so I wasn't taking any salary because I had my job teaching at UCN at the time. Mm-hmm. And but I was just joining this fun group of guys every Saturday and then working on some nights as well.
Yeah.
But it was just this the Saturday group of guys, we would meet up to build our flying car out of carbon fiber and all kinds of other cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I just remember I was so happy and excited to come every weekend. Because a lot of people are like, oh, but you spend every Saturday working and stuff. But it was so cool. Because
it didn't feel like work.
Yeah. Like, since I was a teenager, when you would see these movies where there would be, like the teenage bad boy or whoever who would have his, 1960s or 70s, piece of crap car that his dad gave to him or whatever, that he would always be, tightening some kind of bolts on the engine. And I just always thought, I don't even know how, I don't know how to do that kind of stuff. And I think it's so cool to have that kind of like a man hobby in my mind, right? And that was kind of my man hobby, that we'd meet up, get the tools out, do all kinds of stuff. Like I'm a business guy. I'm not an engineer.
Yeah.
But I was on the floor with at the time we had stencils.
Yeah.
To outline the carbon fiber and cut it out with scissors to layer it up and
exactly. That was such a fun time.
Yeah.
Hey, Mik and Trav here. We're not only podcast hosts, we're also entrepreneurs who've raised millions of dollars for our own company.
That's right. And now we're helping founders like you do the same. If you want to work with us, DM us the word podcast on Instagram, which you can find in the description below. That's the word podcast.
That was like when we were building the flying car, right? We're still in the build at that time, doing that.
Yeah, version 2 now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So you had the one that you built.
Yeah, that almost blew me apart with batteries that exploded and Chinese motors that exploded. Yeah, that was crazy.
Which was kind of actually the point of getting the co-founders, right? Because it was kind of your project for a while, and you have a very strong mechanical engineering background.
Yeah.
But then it's like you're like, electronics, I can learn that. Software, I can learn that. And like obviously you're good in business as well. But then it turns out like just snap of a finger learning software and electronics, like things go wrong along the way.
Yeah. Not so easy as I thought.
Blew up some motors and stuff like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and then now we're kind of going, the creativity is high, but it doesn't last for very long before that money on our account like slowly sieves out, right? And we had 2 other founders that didn't have another job, and we kind of had to support them because the ultimatum was kind of like, if you want us to work on it, which was what we wanted because they were doing the electronics and software, which was at that point in time what we needed on the flying car to get it to actually fly.
Yeah.
And they need a salary. And I also need a salary because I was unemployed at that point in time. And what happened there was I had to go out and get a job, pulling money in as a consultant actually to AirFlight. And I did the first job at an old customer of mine in DIC, but it was here in Aalborg and it wasn't paying that well. And I could just see we cannot sustain this if I keep doing that. And in that week of like kind of almost running out of cash for the first time after just 1 month or 1.5 months,
which is really high stakes.
Yeah,
because you've just gone through the bankruptcy.
Yeah,
you had your
now we're doing it again.
You had some reserve cash to kind of like and doing some side work to get going. But it's like, okay, if the cash runs out, well, then the other 2 guys doing the electronics and software, they're out the door.
Yeah.
And like, there's nothing for you and me to do anything. We can't buy any parts or anything.
Yeah.
So without any kind of cash coming in, then it's game over like almost as soon as it starts.
Yeah, exactly. And then what happens is like kind of a miracle. One of my old customers in DIC group, he calls me up and says, I'm really sorry to hear about the bankruptcy. What about that you come down and work for me? And I was like, but that was like 3 hours away from home. And I had to be there like 4 or 5 days during the week and then come home. And I couldn't work on AirFlight and stuff like that. So there was a lot to consider. But he was willing to pay me a pretty good price on my hours. So I went home to Klaudia. And since we've actually discussed it, she was kind of like, yeah, you kind of took the decision without really like consulting with me, which I can kind of see in retrospect. But I came home from my perspective and said like, listen, there's this opportunity, but it's 3 hours away and I'm not going to come home 4 days a week. And she kind of like agreed to it. And
because I mean, we live in Aalborg.
Yeah.
And this was in Odense.
Yeah.
Which is like, we're in the northern part of Denmark. This is like all the way you have to drive to the southern part of Denmark and then straight east for a while, 3 hours. So essentially, I mean, like when you did this, when would you leave and when would you come back? Like just to give the perspective, because it was insane actually.
Yeah, exactly. So I woke up at 2:30 in the morning and prepared myself to On Monday, yeah. Yeah, on Mondays, that was the routine. So getting up early.
So if you don't like Mondays, tune into this.
Yeah. So I would get up 2:30 and prepare everything that I needed, like, food, clothes for the next 4 days, and then sit out in the car and then drive 3 hours in pitch black and arrive so that I was there a little bit early and stuff like that, and then essentially start working like 10, 12 hours each day until Thursday evening, and then drive those 3 hours back or Friday at noon or something like that. So that was tough.
Yeah, you lived the majority of your life over there.
Yeah.
So like you said, working 10, 12 hours a day just to pull in as much cash as possible.
Yeah.
And then funneling that. You did that like as a consultant to funnel that cash into AirFlight.
Exactly, to pay for all the tools, all the costs that we essentially had, right? Taking a shit salary myself and then paying the other 2 guys whatever shitty salary that they could agree to at that point. And I actually remember now, one of the things that I've reflected upon over the years is like, how the hell could I actually manage that? Because it was much tougher afterwards, looking back, being like, how the hell did I actually do that? Living kind of like a long distance relationship on those days and then coming home.
Growing Forward is sponsored by Shaping New Tomorrow, State Energy, and Vestamark Consult.
You'll find links to our sponsors in the description below. Cheers, Trav.
Cheers.
I've been doing MMA for like 15 years now, and they had a really good club in Odense that I could join on Mondays and Wednesdays and get beaten up, essentially. and that social aspect, I actually think, like, really kept me going. Otherwise, I would have been like much more lonely than what I already felt.
Yeah.
But that just getting a little bit of connection with people doing the same sport as you, I think that's actually like what could keep me going.
Yeah, something to like hold on to and look forward to, and enjoy yourself during that time. I remember that was so important to you because I didn't take a salary at that point either because I had my full-time job at UCN, but you were really like out there grinding. You were away from home, and part of the reason that also that Klaudia also agreed to it and that you also agreed to it is because it was supposed to be for like 4, 5, 6 months.
Yeah, maximum
To pull in the cash we needed, and then we thought like, okay, then the flying car will be done.
Yes.
Then it will be flying.
We'll get investors.
And like the investors, they'll be lined up for this product because who wouldn't be? Cash will rain from the sky. But it wasn't 4 months, and it wasn't 5 months, and it wasn't 6 months that you did this for.
It was 1.5 years.
Yeah. Closer to like 18, 19 months.
Yeah. Yeah, fuck.
And you were working outside.
Yeah.
In all of the seasons.
In all of the seasons, yeah. That is actually something that I sometimes miss a little bit. I think a lot of office people actually miss out a lot on like being outside.
Yeah.
But when it's like minus 15 outside and you work with steel and you have steel tools in your hand, that's cold.
It's a little chilly.
Yeah, that's cold. Yeah, and then actually being after 6 months of being in this process of getting the flying car assembled and trying to get it to fly, then we get hit by the global pandemic. And then what happens is like our whole concept around the business of AirFlight, which were to like go to Las Vegas and fly in these insanely big halls, but for the purpose of entertainment.
Yeah, we wanted to make flying go-karts.
Yeah. And then all entertainment kind of in like March globally was just like, boom, shut down. Movies, entertainment, going on water skis, everything was just like, if it had anything to do with entertainment, it was shut down.
Yeah.
And then we were like, fuck. And that was like this is at the end of, or in the beginning of 2020, right? And then then we're kind of like, we're just on the verge of getting the car to fly. But we kind of think that each week. And I remember you and me kind of like calling each other because we felt that the two founders at that point, it was going slow, right? You remember that?
Yeah, for sure. And that was the whole reason that your stay in Odense got extended, is because the point was you're going to get a little bit of cash. We're going to get the flying car flying. Then we'll get investment.
Yeah.
And in our minds, that was going to take 6 months.
Yeah.
And then once we kind of hit
maximum. Maximum.
Like hopefully more like 3 or 4, right?
Yeah.
But then it almost became like so frustrating because we couldn't even predict week to week. Then the guys would be like, yeah, but this week we're pretty sure we figured it out. Like we found this bug in the software. We found these wires crossed on the electrical. So once we get that solved, then it should work, and then it should work, and then it should work. And every week we think next week we'll fly, next week we'll fly. And then it went on for like a year or something like that. So it really, really took a long time to get to the point where we're like, okay, like now we can actually do something here.
Yeah. And but now that you just said that just got me to reflect on that. Just as Alex Moses says, it's the uncertainty in business that makes it hard. Because we had to each week keep believing that they would figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And in the end, they did. But also looking back now, if your team can't, and this is not a critique of the people that we had in our founder team at all, but if you can't figure out problems and get stuff to work within a like short period of time, you have the wrong people. Sorry to say, but it's the wrong people. You got to find someone who can like make shit and get shit done fast.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's been a huge learning curve for us.
Yeah.
And everything that we've taken, like each step of this journey, we've just gotten, we've learned by burning our fingers over and over again, but also by like reading a lot, taking in learnings, incorporating new things, testing stuff out. Some succeed, some don't, right?
Yeah.
But like we've gotten much better at it. And
sure.
it was tough for us because you were in another city working. I was here in Aalborg, but I had my full-time job. I was teaching at the university college here. I was teaching business and innovation and entrepreneurship and everything like that. And then I only had nights and weekends to do AirFlight stuff, and it was only the Saturdays that I saw everybody.
Yeah.
Because I was working on the business strategies and everything from home in the meantime. And you and I, we had a lot of phone calls too, where you would call and you're like, man, like, I don't know, like can they do it?
Yeah.
Like, because I'm trying to hold out, but like, what are we going to do about this? What are we going to do about that? And we kind of just calmed each other down every time and just said, okay, just give it time.
Yeah.
But we could have taken more action on that.
Yeah, we definitely could. We definitely could.
To move it along faster.
And then I remember that it doesn't go that long. I think we've been going for a year, right?
Yeah.
And I think actually that at this point in time, now they call me and I'm in Odense, and then they're like, we're flying. And I remember that moment as like, I fucking cried.
Yeah.
I was standing outside getting that phone number, and I was just like, fuck yeah. And then I remember they sent a video on Slack, and it was just like, hovering straight off the ground, but I just felt so proud because I was like, I fucking knew we could do it.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, that was a moment at that point in time.
It really was.
Yeah.
And like you said, like when you say, then the flying car flew, like anybody listening just probably imagines this, like, the Jetsons with this, soaring miles in the air. And it's like, no. Flying means it was literally just a couple of inches, just a few centimeters for like, 10, 20 seconds at the absolute most.
Yeah.
And it was totally wobbly, but it was off the ground and controllable. And it was just such a milestone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was crazy. But again, like in any startup, right, that success doesn't last for that long, because then I remember that in that is Klaudia actually says to me, listen, I can't keep going like this.
Yeah.
You have to give me a promise and a deadline on when you're going to stop doing this. And I was like, fuck, she's going to push my dreams to the bottom. But I also understood it, right? And I with Klaudia, I've never wanted to sacrifice her for the business. So that kind of put us on the back burner.
Yeah.
But what it also did was then we got the flying car to actually fly, which meant that we got a lot of media attention. And that was a success in itself.
Yeah.
You remember we went on the front page of like the regional paper, right?
Yeah.
And it was so big. And then that
was actually super cool.
Yeah. I remember we were so proud. And then the real part of the business of AirFlight kind of begins at that point in time. But maybe that's for the next episode.
Yeah, that could be a good place to leave a cliffhanger. You've been listening to the Growing Forward podcast with your hosts, Mik and Trav.